For me, actually, it was really about just kind of trying to trim body fat. So I did something called intermittent fasting.
All right, so we have another celebrity that's utilized intermittent fasting. Now, full disclaimer, the bulk of the benefit that's coming from intermittent fasting is coming from the fact that you have a consolidated eating window. Now, in this video, he does talk about his particular time frame in which he eats, which we'll break down a little bit, but then he does go into a little bit of detail talking about the actual foods that he eats. He talks about his cheat meals and things like that. So we're gonna analyze what he has to say and maybe talk about what I would do a little bit different, but also talk about what probably worked so well for him. Because at the end of the day, Chris Pratt had a crazy transformation and he stays in remarkable shape, and he's still kind of following a lot of the same protocol now that he did even when he dropped weight. So let's go ahead and dive into this.
And I ate from like noon to about 6 p.m. That was my window to eat. And what did I eat in that time? Pretty much just healthy, boring stuff.
All right, so he ate generally from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. So that's an 18-hour fasting period. Now, what I want to mention here is what I probably would have done different is not done that every day. Okay, you know, on this channel, we talk about intermittent fasting, but we also talk about all kinds of other ways, right, to lose weight. The thing with intermittent fasting is when you consolidate your eating window that much, you do need to be sure that you're getting adequate calories within that eating window. So a lot of times what I tell people to do is, hey, have fasting be the anomaly to what you're normally doing, to your normal diet. What I mean by that is if there's 7 days in a week, fasting maybe 3 days per week is ideal. You want it to be the minority, not the majority, unless you can make a concerted effort to get adequate calories during that eating window. Because the evidence is very, very strong that even independent of body fat mass reduction and muscle and just mass reduction in general, there is a metabolic slowdown that occurs when we restrict calories. So if the primary basis of intermittent fasting is restricting calories, then we are not immune to these overall metabolic slowdowns that occur. So what I find is that by being more aggressive 3 days per week, possibly even go longer fasting, 18, 20-hour fast, 3 days a week, you allow those to be your sort of extreme deficit days. And then it allows you on the other days to have a little bit more flexibility with your diet. Let's go ahead and dive into a little bit more of what he actually ate specifically. And also, just a note, if you are fasting, I put a note down below to try LMNT electrolytes. These are fasting-friendly electrolytes, and they now have a sparkling version. So they have literally all the flavors that you would get, plus some more, in a sparkling, ready-to-drink beverage. So 1,000 milligrams sodium, 200 milligrams potassium, 60 milligrams magnesium. And with any purchase using the link down below, you get a free sample variety pack of their electrolyte stick packs. So the same electrolyte ratio, no calories, ranging up to 5 calories, perfect for a fast, keeps you satiated. I use them whether I'm fasting or not. But anyhow, that is a very special link down below that gets you that exclusive deal. So that is drinklmnt.com/Thomas. Whether you're reducing calories or fasting, you've got to give it a shot.
There was a lot of chicken breasts, there was a lot of lean protein, a lot of vegetables. I might have like corn tortillas with some eggs, a lot of avocado, good, clean, healthy fats, tons of coffee, black. I'm like a cowboy, you know, I drink my coffee black.
Okay, something you may already know, but when you are fasting, black coffee is fine. And people ask all the time, like, is it going to break a fast? Look, there's a negligible amount of calories in coffee. If you wanted to get down to the granular, you could possibly say it's going to break a fast. But the net benefit of the coffee with the fat mobilization, the increases in resting energy expenditure, the increases in expenditure in general, makes you move more, increases your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Coffee through and through is amazing. It's the stuff that people usually put in coffee that kind of counteracts it, right? So 2 to 5 calories coming from black coffee, even during your fast, is amazing. Now, Chris leaves a lot to be desired with what he talks about here with his diet. I mean, he says, I eat a lot of lean protein and I ate a lot of veggies and some corn tortillas and some avocados. I mean, all in all, he's essentially describing a Mediterranean style diet with the addition of some corn tortillas. I mean, the only thing that I would say added in there to make it more Mediterranean would be more concerted effort towards polyunsaturated fats, a little more of a concerted effort towards maybe some seafood. Without knowing exactly what he's looking at, I can't tell you specifically. But one thing we are seeing with just across the board with any of these sort of critiquing type videos is the common denominator is the lean protein. Okay, not a lot of them are talking about eating crazy fatty cuts of meat. I like a good, juicy, fatty ribeye. Do not get me wrong. But the bottom line is, if you were to take a look at 2 ribeye steaks that weighed the same amount, the chances of them being the same amount of fat or same amount of calories is pretty slim. Like, one might have a thick ribbon of fat, one might not. You could have a delta of like 100 calorie difference. And when you're getting down to the granular, and you're especially with your intermittent fasting, I think it's important to pay attention to that. So what I notice across the board, and I've worked with a number of A-listers, I've worked with a number of celebrities, and generally speaking, they do know how to rapidly lose weight, and they do know how to do it, and they usually do have pretty good people working with them. But I do notice that almost all the time they lean into the lean protein. Okay, there is something there. The thermic effect of the protein, not to mention, you're not adding the extra calories in. Then he mentions corn tortillas. I think that's probably just because it's a delivery system for the protein, right? I've talked about this a lot. Like, I use a deli meat a lot as a delivery system for sometimes more protein, or a delivery system for other things, right? He's just using corn tortillas. Do I have a problem with corn tortillas? Bottom line, no. I think you're talking relatively small amount of carbohydrates. What I would have done differently with Chris is I would have been like, hey, are you married to the corn tortillas, or could you go for like a siete tortilla? Maybe get the grains out a little bit more if you're feeling brain foggy. Or you're sitting in this gray area where your carbs are so low, but not all the way keto. Like, do you want to just go lower carb, or do you want to just have a little bit of these tortillas, like putting you right into what I call the death zone, right? It's where you're so low carb, but not all the way low carb, that you like don't have enough energy to function.
Periodically, you gotta treat yourself with a cheat meal. And so for me, it's desserts, man. I go to my mother-in-law's house for Sunday family dinner, and I just go crazy on the desserts. And that's everything from ice cream and cookies, cake, pie. And I do about 7 days worth of damage, and I take about 7 days to pay that off. And at the end, get right into it.
Okay, he's joking here, but I recently published a video on this. What people don't realize is cheat meals do a ton of damage. And he says it jokingly, but he probably knows it, right? He says, I end up doing about 7 days worth of damage. Takes me about 7 days to bounce back from it. People don't realize that that is what happens. Okay, so let's pretend for a second that you went a week or 5 days or 6 days in a caloric deficit, right? And that total caloric deficit for those 5 days ended up being, let's just pretend 3,500 calories. That would put you at 1 pound of weight loss over the course of that week. Okay, but then on Sunday, you decide that it's your cheat day. So you go to town and you have desserts and you have pies and you have all this stuff. And you end up getting, okay, let's say 5,000 calories in, which very easily happens. I know it sounds crazy, like, oh my gosh, 5,000 calories, it can happen very easily. If you go out to eat twice and have like 2 rounds of desserts, you could easily be there. Okay, so on one hand, not only did you just cancel out the overall caloric deficit you put yourself in over the course of the week, so for 2 reasons: 1, your weight dropping, and 2, your resting metabolic rate decreasing from a caloric deficit, the impact of every surplus calorie is more than it ordinarily would be. So not only did you overeat by 3,000 calories, but you also had slowed your metabolism a bit the week before and then overate. So each time, each week that you reduce calories more and have a cheat meal, even if it was an equal cheat meal, so even if Chris ate the same exact cheat meal every week, but he was reducing calories more and more each week, but then ate the same cheat meal every week, he would do more damage each week and set him back more each and every week. So what we learned from this, a big important takeaway, is when you do your cheat meals, if you do them, you need to shrink them as time goes on, because you cannot do the same damage. You don't want to do the same damage.
One thing you don't put in a protein shake is protein. Call it a protein shake. It's a milkshake.
Okay, again, he's joking, that's Chris's style, but it's interesting because if you look online about kind of some of his diets that he's done, like obviously protein shakes are a big piece of this. I think protein shakes have their place in a diet. Now, especially when you're someone that is busy and you're on the go all the time. Now, what ends up happening, especially with people that aren't familiar with what they're doing, or they do make these protein shakes and they'll add a couple tablespoons of peanut butter, or they'll add something else to make it taste good, or they'll make it with whole milk or whatever. I encourage people to look at protein shakes purely as a supplement. When you start treating them as food, it's problematic. That being said, a protein shake in a whey protein concentrate is fairly close to a whole food. Technically, it's ultra processed if you want to get literal, but it's close to a whole food in the sense that you're still getting the milk solids, you're still getting the lactoferrin. It's like drinking real milk, except with a lot of the other stuff removed from it. But if you consider it a meal, you set yourself up for failure. Okay, so what I typically do with my protein shakes is I will make them usually with water. And I know that sounds lame, but the goal is to increase the protein without increasing these erroneous calories, right? So he's making a crack here. He's making a joke because a lot of people do this. Like, I'm gonna have my simple protein shake in the morning, and it ends up being a 700 calorie monster. So if you do it right, a protein shake can be like a 90 to 120 calorie quick bolus of protein. And by the way, remember that whey protein absorbs fast and the thermic effect of it is quite high. So you're looking at 20 to 25% of the calories from your protein shake probably just going to the sheer digestion of that protein to begin with.
What does success taste like? I've never eaten success. I'll tell you though, when you are blessed to find some success, it tastes like the food you want to eat. It tastes a lot better than canned sardines and cup of noodle and top ramen, which I ate for years.
Okay, so in this interview, Chris Pratt didn't leave a whole lot of information there for us, but I did a little bit of digging, looked around a little bit more, and intermittent fasting is a big piece of his life still. Now, one thing that we do need to know is specifically if you're eating this kind of style long term, you do need to take periodic time off from it. Now, I don't mean going back to a regular diet. There are these things called strategic diet breaks. And I've talked about this before, but basically the way a diet break works is you need to rekindle that metabolic rate without rebounding, right? So the general rule of thumb is like every 8 to 10 weeks, you need to reverse diet a little bit. Now, what that looks like is going back up to maintenance calories. So this is where people make a mistake. So if Chris Pratt had lost a lot of weight and then he started to regain as soon as he went back to normal, more than likely what would happen, especially in the case of fasting, because it happens quite a bit, is you've gone from a consolidated eating window with relatively low calories back to normal eating, back to probably your normal eating habits. Now, that is going to restore the metabolic rate to a certain degree, but it's also going to come with a lot of extra fat gain. What you want to do is you want to slowly increase your calories up to what your current maintenance level is. So for example, if you're 300 pounds and you lose weight down to 200, you wouldn't after 8 weeks go back to what you would eat at 300 pounds. You would increase your calories a little bit to what your new weight is, what maintenance is at your new weight. Because obviously if you're losing weight, you're eating below maintenance, which is a telltale sign that A, you're losing weight, you're doing something probably right, but B, you're eating below your threshold, right? So you need to, or I shouldn't say your threshold, but you're eating below your maintenance, your baseline. So you need to bring it just back up to baseline. Now, getting yourself back up to your new baseline can be kind of a difficult thing to figure out, right? Because you haven't been at this weight for very long, but you're continually losing weight. So you want to put on the brakes just enough so that weight loss stops, right? This is extremely hard for people to do that are losing weight, which is exactly why they run themselves into this problem. So in the case of Chris, he does this and he puts himself probably into a spot where maybe his metabolic rate is a little bit slower. So the way that you reverse that is you increase that caloric intake just a little bit. Another way that you can do it, I've talked about this a lot, is by increasing activity level and increasing your intake at the same time. So you're increasing the amount of energy moving through your system, called G-flux, right? So you have more food coming in, but you also have more energy going out. So you're basically conditioning everything to be able to handle a higher amount at one point in time. The goal here being so that when you do continue to pull levers to lose weight, they actually work and you don't have to get yourself down to this adaptive thermogenesis state of 500 calories a day to even make an impact. We've all seen those people that are overweight or obese that are eating 1,200 calories per day and still not losing weight. I don't want to say they have a broken metabolism. They actually have a perfectly functioning metabolism that is going through what's called adaptive thermogenesis. Now, the main takeaway that I got out of what Chris was doing in this particular diet and how he lost all the weight that he did is he used a consolidated eating window, But the main thing he focused on was keeping protein extremely high during that period. There is lots of evidence to suggest that you can literally build muscle in a caloric deficit as long as protein needs are met and there's adequate stimulus. So if you take 3 or 4 days a week, not every day like Chris did, and you apply 18 to 20 hour fasts, but you keep protein high enough, you could very well build muscle during those days and also burn fat at the same time. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel. If you like these kinds of review type videos where there's a practical application, let me know down below in the comments, but also let me know specific diets you like to see me critique and break down and get general overviews of. As always, I'll see you tomorrow.